Guys, welcome to another episode of College Football Game Day Live presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm your host, Thor Nystrom, along with my co-host, as always, Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports. Mike, how you doing on another glorious college football Saturday?
Good. I took UCLA getting two, so I'm feeling good. Won that one last night. Seemed to be an easy one to me.
Yeah, it was a glorious win for UCLA and old Chip Kelly. Mike and I are going to be with you guys for the next 90 minutes, handicapping as many games as we possibly can, answering audience questions. So if you have any questions, put them into the box, and we will get to them before we finish the show. Mike, let's get right to it. Noon kickoffs, Eastern. Let's start with the game that is taking place where I'm coming to you guys from in Minneapolis, Purdue at Minnesota. We got a live line in this game of Minnesota minus 10.5 with a total of 53.5. Mike, what are you seeing in this game?
I like Minnesota. I like what they've done. I'm not telling you to pick Minnesota. I'm just telling you what I like about them as a football team. Big offensive line. Mo Ibrahim's back. Passing has been, surprisingly efficient. But 9 is a lot to lay. I think Purdue is one of those teams that you just can't figure out how good they are, but they have a weapon in Charlie Jones that I just don't know if Minnesota can stop. He's gone over 100 yards easily in every game this season. They have a pretty balanced defense, even though it's inconsistent in a lot of ways, giving up 35 points to Penn State, 32 points to Syracuse. But I think O'Connell's expected to start. I just think they can keep this within 9. I've got Minnesota moving to 5-0. And I have them actually being undefeated headed into that Penn State game in the middle of October. But I just have a feeling that this is going to be more of a 4 to 6 point victory rather than 9.
So yeah, and because the margins are so close on the line, for me, my lean in this game is the under. My total is right around what the Las Vegas, like my system's total is right around what the Vegas total is right now. But Minnesota's defense has been nasty so far. They're actually number 3 SP plus. They're also top 10 in EPA per play against both the run and the pass, and then just overall defensively. So I really like their defense. And Mike, you mentioned that Purdue's defense has been solid to this point. Minnesota, if it has its druthers against Purdue, it'll play them like Iowa plays opponents, where if it gets a 10-point lead, double-digit lead, it's just going to grind on you and just lean on you. Purdue does have O'Connell back in this game, but they've had so many different skill guys that are either out, questionable, et cetera. I don't believe they're going to have King Deru in this game. So it's going to be another game where Purdue needs to lean on the pass. Again, you are getting O'Connell back, but a lot of moving parts there. I don't know if Brock Thompson's playing in this game, so they might be shorthanded in the receiving room again. I expect more of a low-scoring game where I think the final's going to land right around that number. Mike, I agree with you. I think Minnesota's going to win, but I'm not touching the sides for that reason. Our next game, another Big Ten one. And we have, by the way, a loaded card at noon Eastern today, just absolutely loaded. Michigan at Iowa. Live line on this one is Michigan minus 10.5 in Kinnick today with a total on this game of 42 points. Mike, what are your thoughts on this game?
That's a low total, and I think that's obviously, a low total because of how Iowa is on offense. And the expectation is that, this is going to be sort of a slugfest. This is going to be two coaches that prefer to set up the pass with the run, and they're going to play conservatively. And, there was all this talk about J.J. McCarthy and opening up the offense. And we've heard that at Michigan probably a billion times. But it's Blake Corum. It's the offensive line. It's pounded. He had 30 carries and 240-something yards last week against Maryland, and he was the reason that they outlasted them. And then Iowa can't throw the ball, so they're going to run the football. So that number's low. I'm not saying take the under. You could toy with it, though, because I think it's going to be rated around that number. I like Iowa just because it's at home. They play very well at home. They play very well against top 5 teams at home. And this is one of those situations where every game is different. It doesn't matter what happens in the past, but when you see trends like that, that Kinnick is kind of like a giant killer place. Now, I prefer it would be at night. That would change everything. But the fact that they play so well against top 5 teams at home leads me to believe that Iowa can cover this game. Michigan's going to win, but that 10.5 is a little bit too much for me to lay.
Yeah, but to your point, I had a text conversation this week with a football writer, a national football writer who's a Michigan alum, and he wanted to know my opinion on this game. And so I started to say it, and then he immediately went in he's a Michigan alum. He immediately went in with his opinion, which is he is terrified that this game is in Kinnick Stadium at 11 o'clock a.m. local time. Terrified that Michigan is heading in there because, like you mentioned, Kinnick Stadium has been a house of horror for top 5 teams. Like, to this point, it's becoming statistically significant. Iowa is 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games at home against top 5 teams with several outright wins. They are a giant killer at home. It's just the way that it is. And Michigan plays so similarly to Iowa, you would think theoretically that it should be not easy, but it should be easier for Iowa to make Michigan play the way that they want to play than, say, a team like Ohio State. But then again, I also had the same thought experiment when it was Iowa against Michigan in the Big Ten title game, and Michigan absolutely walloped them. But then again, it is a different scenario taking that game from Indianapolis and then putting it into Kinnick Stadium with the early kick. I definitely do like Iowa for these reasons. Just because Iowa's my alma mater, I'm not going to bet it. I don't want to jinx it, but I can tell you, Michigan alums are nervous about this one. And I think Iowa people are maybe quietly confident. Iowa has the number 1 SP plus defense. Everybody makes fun of the offense, but their defense is legitimately nasty. One of the best ones that Ferentz has had. And the special teams is so good too. Consensus top 15, unit, whatever you look at. And the punter specifically, Torrey Taylor, is going to be kicking in the NFL here pretty quickly. Mike,
Yeah.
moving. I'm taking Iowa too. We're both on Iowa.
Just to one point on that, Justin Jacobs is out, and that hurts.
Yes.
I mean, obviously he's one
point.
of the better football players, which I think is going to help Michigan in the run game. So one of the props I have is where was it? Blake Corum. His number was low. It wasn't super low. It wasn't Michael Mayer like steal money low, but it was 83.5 yards rushing. I took the over on that one just because, again, this is going to be Donovan Edwards, their backup running back. His status is still questionable. Harbaugh doesn't talk about injuries, doesn't give you any indication whether he's going to play. Last week, Corum had 30 carries. The next guy, J.J. McCarthy, with 5. So Corum's going to get his carries, take the over 83.5 yards rushing in Iowa because I think that's what they're going to lean on him quite a bit. And here are the numbers. 2008, number 3 Penn State comes into Kinnick and they lose. 2010, number 5 Michigan State comes in. They get blasted. 2016, number 2 Michigan comes in. They lose. 2017, number 4 Penn State comes in and they escape narrowly with a 21-19 victory. 2017, we all remember the Ohio State game where they lost 55-24.
I was at that game, Mike.
that must have been, because that was a night game. That must have been one of the best atmospheres you're ever going to attend ever.
It was absolutely spectacular. I never thought in my life I would see Nate Stanley beat Ohio State by 3 touchdowns, or 4 touchdowns, whatever it was. But glorious game. Was
Fant? Did he have a big game in that one?
Yeah. Well, we had both Fant and Hawkinson on that team. Yeah.
So, and then 2021, last year, Penn State goes in there as the number 4 team in the country, and they lose. So, listen, it's a dangerous game. And if you're going to give me 10.5 points. The money line is intriguing here. You might want to match that a little bit. It's plus 320 because history says that Iowa could not only cover this game but win it. 320 is a very intriguing money line if you want to drop a few bucks there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Going back to the Michigan alum football writer I was talking about, he mentioned he thought this game is a coin flip straight up. I'm not going to go quite that far, but getting the 10.5 points, certainly with a defense as good as Iowa's. And then I absolutely think they have a puncher's chance to win this game. All right. So, I mean, if you want to wet your beak on that money line, get with the juiced odds. I'm not going to argue against you. Guys, we're going to go through 2 more games at noon, and then we're going to get to your questions. So if anyone has any questions out there in the room, just type them in, and we will get to all of them. Any questions you have about any game on the card today. Mike, our next one with a noon kickoff. Let's head to the SEC for this one. Kentucky, who is getting back Chris Rodriguez for this game. Chris Rodriguez was suspended for 4 games, the first 4 games of the season because of an off-season DUI charge. Kentucky's getting them back. They are heading to Ole Miss. We got a live line in this game of Ole Miss -6.5 with a total of 54.5. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I don't like the line. I wouldn't touch it. It's a weird number. I mean, 6.5, and it could toggle to 7. I think this is going to be a close football game, but I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I like the under, though. There's a lot of things pointing towards the under. The total's gone under in 15 of Kentucky's last 20 games on the road. It's gone under in 4 of their last 5 games. It's gone under in 11 of Mississippi's last 12 games, if you believe that. Mississippi with this great offense. And it's gone under in 6 of Mississippi's last 6 games against SEC opponents. Under is screaming here, and it's 55 live. So that's what I would take. I think this is going to be, a game where Chris Rodriguez is obviously going to change a little bit of the offensive. They're going to run Will Levis. They're going to try to play a more physical brand of football against Ole Miss, control the clock, keep Ole Miss's offense off the field, and I think you could see a game that definitely comes in under.
Yeah, for me in this one, I'm going to take Kentucky. The one thing that concerns me, I was on a show last night, and the host asked me. He said, with this game, are you starting to become concerned that Kentucky is the square dog of this week, where every square on every block is taking Kentucky? I know a lot of sharp guys on Kentucky as well, so maybe it's not the square underdog side. Maybe it's just the entirety underdog side. It's pretty easy to talk yourself into Kentucky in this game when you're getting all of those points, because you're getting Chris Rodriguez back to this team that you've already seen succeed to this point. Would seem to be a really good compliment for Will Levis. And of course, we started to see that last year, but adding that element to this offense, I think, is really important. I think they're also getting back another kid as well. Mississippi is also getting a little bit more healthier. They might be getting a wide receiver back in this game as well. But I just think the inclusion of Chris Rodriguez into this game with Will Levis, and Mike, you mentioned how good Kentucky's defense typically is in games like this. Getting those points, I think I'm going to take them. But I do think there's also more value on the card. Like, this is just a lean for me. I haven't bet this one, but I would lean Kentucky for sure. Mike likes the under on this game. The last game we're going to talk about with a noon Eastern kickoff today. This time we're going to go to the Big 12. Oklahoma is traveling to TCU. We got a live line on this game of Oklahoma -5.5. The total is just under 70 live right now at 69.5. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like Oklahoma in a bounce back. Obviously Kansas State beat them. Kansas State kind of owns them. I think this is going to be an angry Oklahoma team. I think they've got a lot to prove. There's been a lot of bad things that have occurred for Oklahoma over the last week or so. So this is going to be a test. And by bad things, I mean, they lost to Kansas State, and they weren't supposed to. People questioning, of course, immediately, is Brent Venables over his head? Is Lincoln Riley missed? All that other stuff that's swarming around the program, as you expected with the first loss. They lost a 5-star recruit. It was supposed to be an absolute lock for Oklahoma, and he went to Texas A&M. I mean, they're just getting gut punch after gut punch here, and they're either going to have to rise up and take the next step and really against an overmatched TCU team and show what they're made of, or just fall down. And so when you're laying 5, I know it's on the road, and that offense has been solid. I mean, it's there were no mistakes last week. It's just that it's typical. It's the defense giving up big plays, not being able to game plan against a running quarterback. And then, of course, Dylan Gabriel being very efficient until he needs to make a key 3rd down pass, and he skips it in the dirt. Those things concern me a little bit, and the offense concerns me a little bit. But if you're only laying 5 against TCU, I think you should win.
Yeah, for me though, I'm going to go the other way and disagree with you, Mike. I do like TCU a bit, getting those 5.5 points. Not a game that I bet quite yet, but it's another one where I got to lean. I might bet today, especially if that number toggles up before kickoff. We'll have to see in the hour and roughly 45 minutes that we have left. The motivation thing you're talking about with Oklahoma, it's funny you're talking about it from that side. I'm really interested in the motivation on the TCU side. Not that there's any reason so far that we've been given to question it. It's just the situational spot. Last week, we knew how many eggs Sonny Dykes was putting in the basket of beating SMU. That was a game that they had circled, over the offseason. Obviously, that's where he came from. And they won that game with very good performance. Now you're turning around. And it's not that you're going to overlook Oklahoma's. It's not that at all. It's the prep time and the focus that went into the previous game. Now you come off that win. Again, a big win. Things have been going well for you. You're still undefeated. Now you got to turn around. You got to face Oklahoma the next week. Their focus needs to be there. If they play as well as they did against SMU, in my opinion, TCU wins this game outright. But, I mean, they're going to have to come with that exact same focus because Oklahoma, they're going to make you bring your lunch pail the whole game. There's a different constitution to this Oklahoma team this season than we'd seen with the Lincoln Riley teams, but they can still generate the explosive plays in the passing attack. Dylan Gabriel showing that he can fire downfield and everything like that. I also think from the motivational side for TCU, there's also the thing of Oklahoma has been big brother to you going back now 7, 8, 9, 10 years. You might even argue longer than that since they started playing. I think it's Oklahoma's covered 6 of the last 7 games against TCU. They've been beating them by margin. This is a shot where Oklahoma's a bit down from the recent historical precedent, and TCU is definitely up. People that listen to me and follow me, they know that over the summer I was beating the drum for TCU, and TCU absolutely has jumped up. They had so much experience coming back, but this is going to be a very big test for them, both in terms of the personnel that they have. Can you match up against Oklahoma across the formation? And then also, like I said, that focus thing of the awesome prep, the awesome game against SMU. Now you got to turn around and do it again against Oklahoma. So I'm going to take TCU in that game. Mike is on Oklahoma. We got our disagreement. We're going to go to user questions here. Mike, the first one we got is coming from Mike Huseman. Thank you for the question, Mike. Louisville minus 13.5 against Louisville. He wants to know if we have any takes on that one. Mike, you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah. So Louisville, at home. They're away at Boston College. Boston College is not a good football team. They played really, a lot worse than people expected. I mean, they just got drilled by Florida State heading into the season. Some of those pundits, including myself, thought that might be a victory. And they don't look like they can hang with anybody. I mean, they lost to Rutgers by a point, but they lost to Virginia Tech in embarrassing fashion, 27-10. They just got destroyed by Florida State. The big question here is Louisville is so Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know what team you're going to get. Will you get the team that got blown up by Syracuse? Are you going to get the team that just destroyed South Florida after you gave Florida a tough game? I'm going with the talent here, and I think Louisville has better talent. I think they go 4 deep at running back, and Malik Cunningham is the 5th running back. And he's hard to game plan for. He's going to be very difficult for BC to match up against. That rushing attack, he's their leading rusher, but Tyon Evans, the transfer from Tennessee, is very good. And they've got, Jawar Jordan, Trevian Cooley. They've got guys. And BC hasn't been able to tackle. BC's offensive line is also decimated. I mean, they just lost another offensive lineman.
BC's offensive line sucks.
It does suck. And that sucks. Well, it sucks more now because they just lost Finn Sturstein, who's out. So, I mean, the loss of Mahogany, who is their best offensive lineman by far and the leader of that offensive line, he was injured in the spring. It's just everything. It's been downhill ever since. They don't have a leader. They don't have that physical tough guy mentality that they've been playing with. So, but 13.5 is so much to lay here. I mean, I'm confused. I'm going to say Louisville. I'm going to say they cover this because they could win this game by 30. But I'm not confident in that line at all.
Yeah, my lean on it would be the other way. I would lean Boston College. It's funny. You sometimes run into this situation in sports betting. Last week, I tried to sort of not chase Boston College, but I tried to buy Boston College at a low price against Florida State, thinking that maybe Jordan Travis would be out of that game, thinking that maybe Jared Verse would be out of that game. Florida State had some injury concerns. Jared Verse did miss that game, but Jordan Travis came back late in the week and was able to play. Florida State blows out Boston College. Then you turn around the next week. Now I'm sort of skittish on backing Boston College in a similar spot, but this is probably the better one to do it in. Particularly with Jordan Travis having played in that last one. Louisville is a sell team, 1,000%. They've been a sell team since the start of the season. They had that. It wasn't a fraudulent win against UCF, but both those teams played like crap. I watched that whole game. I wasn't impressed with Louisville, even though it's sort of an impressive win winning at UCF. And then obviously Louisville no-showed that game against Syracuse. You mentioned how they've been up, down, up, down, up, down. Florida State beat them in their own place or whatever. I don't trust the constitution of that team. I also don't trust them to stop the run. Jermaine Lowell, who is supposed to be the guy to sort of show her up, one of their weaknesses up front, he's out for the season, Mike, as you know, the Arizona State transfer. But then again, on the other side, Boston College has, arguably the worst Power 5 offensive line. I don't think that's an exaggeration. You would put them down at the very bottom of the FBS, like in the bottom 10 offensive lines in the whole country. Can Louisville generate pressure? And everyone has so far. If they're able to get on Phil Jurkovec without sending extra pressure with blitzers, they're going to be able to do what some of these other teams have done, where you basically take the tent pole away from the circus and bring the whole tent down. Because even though Boston College has Phil Jurkovec and Zay Flowers and an okayish running back room, like with Pat Garwo, they have a couple of kids, no studs. Yeah. They have workman-like guys, but not singular talents. These guys are being confronted with players behind the line of scrimmage every time they touch the ball. So can Boston College do anything up front? Mike mentioned the additional injury that they've suffered up front. They also, by the way, Boston College lost their best defender, the defensive end, Silas something or other, who previously was their best defender. So Boston College is dealing with it on both ends of it. But again, I'm not trusting Louisville. So getting the double-digit points around 2 touchdowns. And by the way, that line has dropped these last couple of days. It was 6, I think it was 17, then it was 16.5, and it had dropped to 14.5. And now the question says it's dropped down to 13.5 live. So I do think some sharp money's coming in on Boston College. But again, they are definitely a hold your nose and bet kind of a team because of the offensive line woes. You're going to get really frustrated with the Boston College ticket if you watch today and people are just ransacking the backfield. But that's what we'll have to watch.
Well, that's my team too, so I will be watching. But they're not good, and it's Shata Salah that's gone. I was close. You got to be very careful with that first name. So I see why you sort of went to the second name. And Jurkovic's been bad; just hasn't been good. The 60% completion rate, 5 picks. He doesn't seem to be running as effectively as he used to. 31 carries, negative 64 yards. Where is his ability to run? That injury last year, I think, took away a lot because he was a threat to balance on the ball, and he doesn't have any sort of positive. As long as 14 this year, and I expected him to be their, second, third leading rusher, and he's negative 64 yards on the season, and he's throwing picks. So all of this is unexpected. You want to talk about 2 guys that were mentioned briefly in the first round, more so Tyler Van Dyke, but these 2 guys, Jurkovic and Tyler Van Dyke, were both, fringe first rounders. They've both been absolutely horrible and a massive disappointment as other ACC quarterbacks have stepped up. So I don't like BC in this game. 13.5 is a tricky line, but they could easily get blown out.
Mike, our next question comes from Tarak Patel. He wants to know our thoughts on Illinois against Wisconsin. Illinois, as I call them, the Kirkland brand Wisconsin, what Brett Bielema has built them into. Now going to Wisconsin to play the real Badgers. You got any thoughts on this one? I think the line is around 7 live, but let me check real quick.
It's an intriguing football game. It's 6.5.
6.5. Okay.
So Wisconsin's laying 6.5 at home, which normally you'd think Wisconsin, Illinois, Wisconsin should be laying double digits. But this Wisconsin team's coming off a horrendous blowout loss. They're not good on the offensive line. This is what's funny about this conversation is because traditionally, who do you think of over the years as really physical offensive lines?
Boston That's what Wisconsin does. Well, yeah, and Boston College as well.
And their line sucks. And Wisconsin's offensive line, and they can't protect the passer, and they're having trouble with a push. I still like them to cover here. I have 2 props in this game too, but I like Wisconsin at home to bounce back, cover the 6.5. But I would go more the props, and my props are one of them's I think legit. One of them's just funny. Tommy DeVito under 199.5 passing yards. Okay, so they're putting them at the 200 mark. We're going to see a lot of Chase Brown. We're going to see a lot of Braylon Allen. We're going to see a lot of punting. We're going to see a lot of slow, boring, conservative football, despite the fact that Illinois is opening up the offense, which hasn't happened. And we're going to see 2 very conservative football coaches here who aren't going to take a lot of chances. So unless Illinois falls behind by 2 touchdowns, DeVito is going to be limited, I think, in what he's going to be doing as a passer. He doesn't really have a lot of great targets. So take the under 199.5 in a sloppy game. This was the one that struck me. Plus 950 for Braylon Allen to score 1 receiving touchdown. I had to do it. I had to. And it's nuts. He's had 13 catches in his 2 years at Wisconsin, none of them for a touchdown. He's not going to be a guy you would think of being thrown to if it's inside the 5-yard line. And that's really his range of receiving scoring. But I saw 950. I saw a game where I could see a potential play action keeping Illinois off balance and maybe a screen to Allen for him to score. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but when I saw plus 950, I'm like, I'll throw $10 on that to win 100. And it makes it more intriguing too, because now I'm interested in this god-awful, slow, boring football game because I want to see if the 250-pound former linebacker in high school, by the way, so that speaks of his hands, can actually catch a receiving touchdown.
I love it. As far as my take in this game, I think the line is objectively fair. I think it's probably too sharp to touch unless you personally feel like you have an angle. I certainly don't on the line. My spread on this, my adjusted spread is Wisconsin minus 7.5. The line's been right around there. I guess it's toggled down to 6.5 now. Indication that the market prefers Illinois in this game because I actually think it was 7.5 earlier in the week, and then it toggled to 7, and now it appears that this morning it's in the last couple of days, I guess maybe it's gone to 6.5. So that's the lean of the market. I totally agree. My lean on this game would be the same one as Mike. I really like the under, and so does my system. By the way, it looks like the over under is at 43. Mike is what it is live, somewhere around that. My adjusted total on this game is 38. So I mean, my system significantly likes the under. Mike had mentioned that Illinois was talking over the offseason about opening up the offense, playing more up tempo. The opening up of the offense, that claim has been a little bit dubious, like Mike was mentioning. They are playing just a little bit faster, but nowhere near what Bielema was indicating over the offseason that they could. Basically, they went from running Wisconsin's pace, which is still, like 115th to 120th in the nation. Like they're one of the slowest running offense in the nation every year, and they are again this year. Illinois has gone from that to now they're essentially about dead even in pace. So they don't play fast. They only play fast in comparison to Wisconsin, right? So, I mean, this is not going to be a fast-paced game, of course. It's going to be the physical run thing. Wisconsin is not going to be surprised by anything that Illinois does. Illinois has already shown a couple of the wrinkles that they're using with DeVito. They can't get much more creative than that. The creativity of the offense, I think you can go back to when they had the first and goal against Indiana, and it was just 4 dives with Chase Brown or whatever. I do like the under. These teams are very, very similar. This is sort of like the off-brand Iowa against Michigan game today. So I'm going to take the under on that one as well. Okay. We'll get to the we're going to move into the afternoon games here in a second. But Mike, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no. You got an important announcement.
I do have an important announcement. College football has returned in all of its glory. Betting pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you a wild offer to start this season. New customers can get $200 in free bets instantly when placing a qualifying bet of $5 or more on any college football game. To get in on the action, just create your new DraftKings Sportsbook account using promo code CFBPros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and then place a bet of $5 or more on any college football game to claim your $200 in free bets. Again, to claim this offer, enter promo code CFBPros at sign up to get started. Bet now before it is too late. That is my life motto as well, Mike. Moving on to the afternoon games. This one, we have a 2 p.m. Eastern kick, although this game is decidedly not taking place in the East Coast. Oregon State, the upstart Oregon State Beavers, heading to Utah to face a Utah Utes team that just lost one of their most dynamic offensive players in Brant Kuithe, the tight end. We can talk about that in a second. Utah, live in the market right now, is a 10.5-point favorite. We have a total on this game of 55. Mike, who do you like on this one?
Okay, so last week, were we both on Oregon State at home against USC? I think we both were.
I'm just going to say yes.
You weren't? Oh,
I forget, but I don't know.
Oh,
who it was. I just had a lean in that one. It wasn't one of my games.
I
think I leaned wrong though.
I was mashing on Oregon State because they haven't lost at home in a couple of years, and they play. It was a sold out crowd. USC going in there a little bit overconfident, and blah. I just felt that was going to be not a loss. I mean, USC won, but it was close. Yeah. Now I see a letdown for Oregon State traveling on the road to Utah. They're coming off what I consider a moral victory and losing to USC by 3. Utah, yes, they lost Kuithe. They've lost, that's a big blow, but they've got 2 other elite tight ends on this roster. If there's one mission that they could afford to lose somebody, even if it is an All-American, it's tight end. I also think they're starting to come together and play the way they want to play. The Florida loss doesn't look as good now that Florida struggled, but Utah's starting to come into their own a little bit here. They're a powerful running team. Rising can beat you with his feet and his arm. I really like their defense. I think their defense is starting to come together as well. And I think Oregon State, just from the letdown factor and having to travel there, odd time, as you mentioned, for a West Coast game, all of this kind of speaks to me for a flat performance from Oregon State. And I think Utah actually beats them pretty handily.
Yeah, I'm going to lean the other.
I know.
Yeah, I'm going to lean the other way. Just I've been so impressed with what I've seen of Oregon State this year. The USC game, the turnover luck went away from them, but then again, they had the turnover luck in the game against Boise State where Hank Bachmeier just gave them the game at the beginning. So maybe some of that evens out. But overall, outside of that stuff, I've just been really impressed. Obviously, they beat Fresno State in that game. The next week, we're able to outlast them. And then last week, very tough loss. And it wasn't just on the scoreboard. Like the post-game win expectancy was a complete coin flip as well. It's a lean for me. I'm concerned about Utah with Kuithe, although I will agree with what Mike said. They had 2 stud tight ends. And what I'm interested in with Utah is now that you lose Kuithe, are you going to try to promote someone up to still run the 2 tight end stuff? Or are they going to try to open the formation a bit more? Because they could go either way. I mean, you could try to, if you like your wide receiver, at least depth more, now that Kuithe's out, you could try to now go 3 wide more often. We'll see what they end up doing schematically. But that, for me, that's a really big loss. I mean, in terms of tight ends around the country, he was one of the most targeted in the nation.
They're going to stay 2 tight end. Okay. They got a kid named Logan Kendall that nobody really knows about. He was a transfer in. They've got Dalton Kincaid. They are loaded. They've loaded at tight end. So I think it's a situation where, I don't know, man. I like the 2 tight end set. I like the physical play that they're going to come on. I haven't seen their depth chart, whether they have that tight end Y, tight end U still on their depth chart. I should probably look that up. But Logan's a fullback, H-back type of guy that's going to get a lot more. He's not as athletic. They don't have that downfield guy now. But I don't know. There's something about that offense where when I was doing the tight ends, there were 3 teams that stood out to me this season that are loaded. Georgia, of course, South Carolina, oddly, and then Utah, oddly. So I'm not concerned about that much.
Yeah, and we need to see Eric Gilbert back because I was so excited to watch those 3 tight ends, and we just haven't gotten to see it because Gilbert's been either a fix to the bench or a fix back in Athens when they travel. But hopefully we get to see him soon because that would be really interesting.
Kincaid, do you like him?
I do like Kincaid. Yeah, I like that. This is probably my Iowa background, having gone to grad school at Iowa and watched all their games. But I really like the college teams that can do the multiple things with the 2 tight ends. And I would really, this is going to go to my playing NCAA 2014. But when I would play with that Iowa team, one thing I love to do with 2 tight ends is run up tempo. And I wish the 2 tight end teams would run up tempo more because I think that's more scary for defenses than with the multiple receivers because you could do more things, right? You can overload sides in the run game. You can put a guy in the slot. You can set them out wide. You can really confuse people with the formations if you run tempo with it. I would love to see a 2 tight end team in college run tempo. But anyway,
well, here's the thing, real quick about Logan Kendall. When that was, I follow the portal very closely, and it's
closer than anyone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So when he was in the portal, he was at Idaho, and he was a 2-time first-team All-Big Sky, and he was an FCS All-American, 3rd team. I'm like, okay, where's this kid going to land? And he landed at Utah, and I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. This is a guy who had 10 catch games, 100-yard games. He actually had 10 catches and 87 yards against Penn State in 2019 as a FCS kid. Why Utah? I didn't understand because they already had Kuthi and Kincaid. And it was like almost an embarrassment of riches at that position. And they use him as a fullback, as an H-back, a lot of different things. But I'm like, why? And that's because of the 2 tight end set. It's because he's rotated in. It's because he's, playing a little bit more in that system than he would anyplace else. So that was a very under the radar commitment for Utah in the transfer portal. And now it's going to pay off. Watch this kid. I'm not saying he's going to go for 10 catches, 80 yards and a touchdown, but he is going to really step up his game, and they're going to utilize him in a lot of different ways. So he's very, very intriguing to me, and Utah losing their best tight end doesn't hurt them like anybody else would.
This kid's name is Jason Kendall, you said?
Logan Kendall. Logan Kendall. He's from Washington. He played at Idaho.
I'm writing this name down. Mike, if he pops off today, I'm definitely going to give you your
well, the transfer portal is such minutia. Did I know Logan Kendall coming out of high school? No, he went to FCS. But it's so minutia. When the kids go in the portal, if their FBS ability, I dig into them very, very deeply. And then I find this garbage out. This kid had 10 catches, 87 yards against Penn State. That's a Power 5 team. I know a lot of stuff that means nothing. So this is kind of in my wheelhouse, which is why I'm spending so much time on it, because I've been waiting to drop a Logan Kendall reference all season long.
I love that. And Mike, I got a story for you in return. It's not going to add any information to the handicap, but I once went to Idaho, to Moscow, Idaho, and played catch on the field of the Kibbe Dome. I don't think people realize it, but Kibbe Dome is one of the few stadiums, like where it used to be FBS when I did, and now it's FCS, but they'll just let you walk in. They just let people walk in. And if you want to go on the field and play catch, we were out there on a Friday afternoon, they'll let you onto the field and play catch. It's actually awesome. The Kibbe Dome is to me one of the 8 wonders of the world. So love that thing. It's like a big, sort of alien ship that rises above the Palouse. If you drive there, because everything's just flat, and then it's just up in this small town of Moscow. Gotta love it. Mike, moving to the next one now. So now we're moving on to the 3:30 Eastern kicks, and we got several of them. I mentioned earlier in the show, the noon kickoff slate is stacked. The 2:31 is too. If you're someone out there who's married or has a girlfriend, you definitely want to rope off the early part of the day, maybe go out to a Saturday night movie or whatever, because the night slate is what is weaker today. But the early slate, this might be the best early slate of a Saturday we've had so far. This one, another great game. Oklahoma State heading to Baylor. This line has done some interesting things this week. It's now gone back up to Baylor -2.5. When it had gotten it was a Baylor -1.5 just yesterday. So there's been some late money coming in on Baylor. We have a total on this game of 55.5. Mike, what do you think of this one?
This is one that struck me a little odd because I like Oklahoma State as a team. I think they're the best team in the Big 12. And I get that there's going to be obviously a point differential when you're on the road. But I honestly felt coming into this week that Oklahoma State would be favored. And this is one of those hold, take pause, see what somebody knows type of things. Because, you would think Oklahoma State, if everything I said, if they're the best team in the Big 12 and they're on this revenge tour and blah, 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 plus 2.5, that would be logical to take that. Nope. Somebody knows something here. Baylor's going to win this football game, and I think they're going to cover, but I like the money line. I got a feeling they're going to win this football game without a doubt. Now it's 135. It's not great odds for the money line, but I like Baylor in this, and I like the money line, pretty extensively. I think this is almost a guaranteed victory based on the fact that this line is wonky to me.
Well, Mike, in this one, usually I'm not the guy that knows stuff, but in this one, I think I can explain it to you. And I love Baylor. Baylor's one of my favorite bets this week. Here's what I think a large part of the reason that the sharps in the market love Baylor. Dave Aranda has had Spencer Sanders in a blender since he got to Waco. Yeah. Between 2020 and 2021, Baylor and Oklahoma State played 3 times. Okay, last year they played twice. They played in the regular season. Then they rematched in the Big 12 title game. That's when Blake Shapen had taken over for Baylor. The year before, that was Aranda's first year, and Baylor stunk. In those 3 games, Spencer Sanders threw 9 of his 20 interceptions from those 2 seasons in those 3 games. Spencer Sanders, as we all know, if you can get pressure in his face, if you can confuse him with coverage looks, you can really easily discombobulate that kid. He does have some talent. He's a mobile kid. His arm is okay, but you can force him into bad decisions, and he has the accuracy issues in addition to that. But he's a kid that he trusts himself maybe too much, and when things are clicking good, he can look really solid, and typically that's against bad defenses. When it starts to go the other way, you'll see him throw right into the chest plate of a defender. Spencer Sanders has some of the worst intercept. Like if you had a highlight reel, you can really confuse him because he's not going to start questioning what he's seeing. He's just going to go with it and toss it, whatever. Dave Aranda has gotten this guy, and this is just the way that Aranda plays defense, but it happens to be a horrible, horrible matchup for Spencer Sanders. Baylor obviously won the Big 12 title game last year. The one in 2020, they got blown out, but they still intercepted Spencer Sanders twice in that game. So there's a lot of that stuff going on where he goes into his worst tendencies against Baylor. And if you go and look at that Big 12 title game, by the way, I think you get an indication of how Oklahoma State is going to play this game, because Oklahoma State going into the Big 12 title game last year, they knew exactly what I'm telling you, that Aranda's got this kid's number. And so what they did, and I think I forgot if Jalen Warren ended up playing in that game or if he was injured. He might have been injured in that one. Oklahoma State did a game plan of, it was all these short passes. So they let Sanders throw, but not into they were trying to avoid him throwing into the teeth of that defense. In that game, Spencer Sanders, he had like 35, 37 attempts, something like that, but he only averaged 1.7 air yards per attempt. They were not even letting him throw 10 plus yards downfield, and he was still getting picked off. In this game, now you definitely don't have Jalen Warren. He's off in the NFL now. Oklahoma State's running game has gone down. Their defense is down from last year because they lost Jim Knowles, they lost Malcolm Rodriguez, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They lost a whole bunch of different talent. So now more of the pressure is put onto Spencer Sanders, where he has to generate the offense, whether through his legs or whether through the air. They're not going to be able to win this game if they're not passing on Baylor. They have to figure out a game plan to allow Spencer Sanders to throw. I'm guessing it's going to be the same one as last time. Spencer, we don't want you to sit and duck back in that pocket. We want the ball out quickly. But again, that didn't save him last time from the Sanders interceptions. I think Baylor's going to be flipping the field quite a bit. I also think, by the way, that Aranda is in Sanders' head. I don't think any of this, I think Spencer Sanders has been thinking about this stuff. Oklahoma State's clearly going to try to scheme around it. I don't think it's going to matter. I like Baylor in this one.
Yeah, I do too. And I will tell you that I mentioned the revenge tour. This is the game that's been circled for Spencer Sanders. One touchdown, 3 interceptions at the regular season game against Aranda. No touchdowns, 4 interceptions in the Big 12 championship. This is the game he circled. So he's done a lot of film work. He's tried to figure out what he did wrong and what he's doing wrong. Revenge tour is this game really in a nutshell, because this is the team he's played the worst against. And the reason why I had him outside my top 25 quarterbacks is because they exploited his weaknesses so well. So I do like Baylor. Now, that being said, I still believe Baylor losing to BYU. I still think Oklahoma State should be favored in this game. So I like it doubly. Somebody knows something. The Sanders struggles against Aranda, and that's why And the reason I say money line, the line is not attractive enough for me to like the 2.5. They're going to either win or lose. This is a pick 'em. So take the money line, mash it strong, and take that 135 out of play by over betting, which is what we all want to do.
Yeah, I hope Spencer Sanders doesn't bring his calendar with this game circled on it, because Dave Aranda will bring out his whiteout. I'm sure he brought that to the stadium. Could just erase him. We'll see if that sort of trend continues. But yeah, I like Baylor. Mike likes Baylor as well. Mike, moving on to the next one, another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. Michigan State, who has been one of the more disappointing Power 5 teams around the entire nation, traveling to Maryland. Maryland played well early in the season. They always do against the Cupcakes, but last week looked a little bit better than we thought against Michigan. Perhaps for that reason, Maryland is laying 7.5 points in this game. We have a total right now of 58 points. Mike, do you have a take on this one?
Yeah, Michigan State. I mean, that's too much for Maryland to lay. I know they played okay against Michigan. They probably had a chance to win that football game if they didn't give away a touchdown on the opening kickoff with the fumble. They're playing better. They've got a very intriguing offense because they've got running backs you've never heard of, but they can hit big plays. Deep wide receiver room. Tungavalaya is playing well. But Michigan State isn't this bad. I mean, they lost in really embarrassing fashion last week. And everybody's talking about Mel Tucker being overpaid and all that guaranteed money, what a waste, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to be the narrative for him forever, anytime he loses a game. But you can't tell me that Maryland should be laying 7.5. So you're giving me the 7 plus a hook at home against the Michigan State team that I think has, pretty good two-headed monster at running back. Okay defense. I mean, they got some playmakers back there. I don't know. It's too much. So give me Michigan State to cover. I don't know if they'll win, but there's absolutely no way you're going to convince me that Maryland's 7.5 points better.
That's where I'm at with this as well. I think earlier in the week, you saw a lot of action coming in on Maryland, and this line had gotten up 8.5, even 9. This is going back a couple of days. But since then, there has been buyback in the market on Michigan State. It's the reason it's come down to 7.5. I would expect it to stay there because, the books are going to get serious buyback. They're going to get probably more money on Maryland if they toggle it down to 7. Certainly, it's at 6.5. So I think 7.5 is the fair number, at least for the market. But my fair line in a vacuum is my system's got Maryland minus 4.2 points in this game. So I am showing some line value on Michigan State. And Mike, I'm on Michigan State for a lot of the same reasons that you are. Who could be impressed with them to this point? Nobody. But if they are not one of the most focused teams around the entire country today, something is badly off there. Mel Tucker, Mel Tucker at least has taken the accountability. He gets it. What comes with that enormous contract. But, he's been talking about, this is a look in the mirror type week. Coming off those games, he readily admitted to the media that he has gotten soundly outcoached in each of the last 2 games, which anyone watching those games knows that. But Mel Tucker, he's not feeling the heat in terms of his job security, but he is hearing all that criticism being levied at him. Certainly his team is as well. And it is a proud program. And this is a lot of points, which is the reason that I'm going to be taking the dog in this. I just think it's a little bit outside of objective reality, even having knocked down Michigan State as much as, you're going to in a power rankings after the last couple of weeks, and even rise in Maryland a bit. I can't get there with the 7.5. I like the value that you're going to get on Michigan State. Now, if Michigan State gets run over in this game again, then that's the moment where you just have to sell them every game. But I'm going to take this one shot to try to buy low on it. Maryland's got some of the injury stuff. It does look like Tagovailoa is going to play, but he suffered that rib injury last week. He can get those nagging injuries. He's a tough kid. He will play through them, but sometimes it will depreciate his performance a little bit if that is nagging. So we'll have to see, his in-game stuff. Then Raheem Jarrett, I was looking to try to find an update on his status. He was more doubtful heading into the week. I don't know if they've announced it today. I believe his designation officially is still questionable, but he's more on the line of I think Tagovailoa is technically questionable, but I don't think there's any shot that Tagovailoa doesn't play. Whereas Jarrett, I think that's trending maybe towards no, but that it's a true game time decision. So we'll see. But obviously if Maryland loses Jarrett, that's one less guy that Michigan State has to worry about in coverage. So again, this one for sure, we were talking before about a hold your nose game and jump. This for sure, you have to do it if you're going to bet on Michigan State after what you've seen the last 2 weeks. But again, that's a reason why you're getting some excess value on the spread here. Theoretical, but I'm going to jump on it. So I'm going to take Michigan State. Mike likes Michigan State as well. And guys, anyone out there watching this, we are going to take, we stopped for questions a few games ago. We're going to take questions again and after a few more games. So any questions you have, type them into the box. We will get to them here in a bit. Mike, our next game, another awesome game in the first 2 time slots. Alabama traveling to Arkansas. This line too has done some interesting things. Earlier in the week, it was a little bit lower. The books had opened it closer to 14.5. Alabama minus 14.5, but it's toggled up to Alabama minus 17.5. But whereas some of those Alabama games just keep pushing up, that's where the market got resistance. So it looks like this game is going to stay at that 17.5 number, probably fair. And we have a total on this game of 61.5. What are your thoughts on this one, Mike?
It's at 17 live on DraftKings right now.
So to toggle down a little bit.
Keep flipping back and forth to 0.5, and the 0.5 is important, sure, but I don't know. This line speaks to Arkansas keeping this within 17 points to me. I know the big concern is the secondary, and Bryce Young can carve them up. They don't have the same receivers that they've had in the past at Alabama, but they've got serviceable guys, and they can use Gibbs in the passing game as well. The secondary worries me. What Pittman's going to try to do in this game is he's going to try to play physical. He's going to try to play smash mouth, Rocket Sanders, KJ Jefferson as the RB2. They're going to try to control the clock and not really play to lose by less than 17. They're going to play to win, but they're going to play their style. If they fall down 14 points, I don't think he's going to change. I think he's going to continue to stick with the running game and what they do well. And to me, that speaks well of a game where they're going to stay close. Last year, of course, they lost by a touchdown. It was a little bit of an anomaly. I don't think Alabama played that well. And I think Treylon Burks kind of carried Arkansas, and Arkansas doesn't have that guy that can carry them this year. But this is a team that just lost on an oink-doink to Texas A&M. They're a proud
off the top of the crossbar. Crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that, by the way, Mike, in any football game? I haven't either.
Never. And they should have won that football game. They made some mistakes. Obviously, the fumble by Jefferson, return for a touchdown. They outplayed Texas A&M. I think this is a team that's going to go into this game, not on a high of confidence because they lost, but angry. And anger can carry you a little bit. Talent wins, but anger will carry them to at least losing by 2 touchdowns and covering that 17.
Anger can carry you. Sounds like a quote from Bane from Batman. I like that. I'm going to be on Arkansas with the points in this one as well. I just think it's too many points. You mentioned the way that Arkansas played Alabama last year. And the one thing that you're concerned about with this Arkansas team, you no longer have any concerns about the offense. like I had sort of micro level questions coming into the year about, for instance, like you funneled so much usage to Treylon Burks and now Treylon Burks is gone. Like, where is that going to go and stuff like that? They figured all that stuff out. And I really like the progression I'm seeing from KJ Jefferson. You have to start thinking about him as an NFL guy. I sort of think of him as like a poor man's Jalen Hurts, at least like right now where he is as a prospect. But this is one of those key games for him and his evaluation, how you play against these really, really good defenses under the bright lights. So that'll be interesting. But on defense, the thing that concerns you about Arkansas, it's the secondary. Especially after Catalon's injury and stuff like that. They'd had some other injuries as well, some guys dinged up and whatnot. They have given up explosive passing plays a bit more than you would like. The rest of the pass defense so far has held up, but they are giving up too many of those long ones. But in this game, usually you would think that would be a bad matchup for Alabama. But Alabama's receiving core is way down this year. And it's not just that, it's that they're doing really weird things with the receiving core, the coaching staff, which I think speaks to like they can't completely get a finger on who's good and who's not good and who should be playing, etc. For instance, Ja'Cory Brooks coming into the year, you thought he was going to be maybe the wide receiver 2, certainly the wide receiver 3, though, at least in terms of usage. Burton's probably slotting at the top. Harrell was going to be in there somewhere. Where for some reason in the first 3 games, they didn't play Ja'Cory Brooks. It didn't really make any sense in the moment. Then finally last week, they played Ja'Cory Brooks and he goes off. So we'll see now. Ja'Cory Brooks has he elevated from being essentially not a total scratch, because he did get into the first 3 games, but was a sort of a quasi-healthy scratch in those first 3 games. Now are they going to, is he going to be not just playing, because it does seem like he's back in the lineup, but like, is he going to be a featured guy again? And then if that's so, why weren't you playing him at the beginning of the season, especially when Tyler Harrell, this guy that you had brought in from Louisville to try to replace what Jamison Williams did downfield, he's been injured. So, yeah. and we'll see if they end up getting Harrell back, but there's so many different moving parts there. My whole point, macro point, as far as this handicap goes, is Arkansas, you're concerned about the deep coverage with Catalan and stuff like that, breakdowns on the back end. This Alabama team, even though Bryce Young profiles, of course, is a quarterback that can beat you deep, their receiving core does not worry you as far as getting deep. Does that make sense, Mike? Is that how you see that?
Yeah. And I got a buddy of mine who does some, dig in research for me, call him Chife. And he came up with this one for me, which was very interesting. Alabama's 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games against opponents in the West. The gap is closing between Alabama and the rest of the world, and especially the West. And I think we saw that a little bit in the Texas game. They're not in the West, I get it. But the teams in the West are starting to play Alabama a little bit closer, and the games are a little bit tighter. And one of those, 4 losses was against Arkansas, against the spread. It just, to me, it seems West teams, when Alabama doesn't do well on the road, West teams at home getting a big number against Alabama is no longer something that you really think about anymore.
Mike, was that stat that you said, was that for road games in the moving West? Was that
no? It's just the last 5 games against West Division opponents, which is kind of crazy. 1-4 is not an Alabama number. Like, they're 6-1 against the spread in the last 7 games in October. That's, you would expect that. 5-2 in their last 7 games overall. But it's against those West, and I was looking forward to see if it was again on the road too, because they don't do that well on the road. But no, this is just against the spread against the West. The games are closer. And I don't have the teams that were involved there. But if you think about it, obviously Texas A&M is one of them because they lost to them last year. Arkansas is one of them because they didn't cover that spread last year. The West is starting to close the gap a little bit here. So when I see a line like 17 for a good Arkansas team that probably should be undefeated, I'm going to mash it and take the 17 and actually not worry too much about it. I don't think it's a lock. But I really feel that this could be a 2-touchdown game for most of the game, and they're going to come in under 17.
Love it. And I'm happy you brought up the trends, because I had one on this game, but I'd forgotten to say it until now. This is why I asked you about the road thing. Alabama, and you were citing most of these games that fall under this trend. This is not one that goes back a super long way. It's just to last season. Alabama's now 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 road games. So but like, it's like, is there anything to that? Is there not? I'm not sure, but we do talk every time we bring up an Alabama game that you have to pay the spread on the tax to bet on Alabama. That is true whether the game is in Tuscaloosa or whether it's on the road. It would stand to reason with paying the tax on the road if, they're not a couple positions are down or the other teams have gotten a little bit closer, that tax will start to come back and bite Alabama. They have had some down performances too. I'm reticent to try to, say that there's anything systemic there because I'm not sure that there is. But I think it's more what Mike's talking about where the other teams in the division or the other teams in the conference, the talent level is going up a little bit. A part of that's just because the open transfer portal and stuff like that now. It's not that Alabama's down, but this year they do have a couple position groups that are down. Offensive line, in addition to that receiving core. So we'll see if that ends up manifesting. But Arkansas is pretty good in the trenches, so that's something to keep an eye on. Mike, our next game at 2:30. Well, this is the one that I've been waiting for. 2:30 local time, 3:30 Eastern. Mike, it's our obligatory talking about Kansas game of the week. And this is a really fun one. Iowa State traveling to Lawrence. Iowa State is favored by 3.5. This line is gone. It's been 4, then it was down to 3. Now it looks like it's toggled up to 3.5. And the total on it is 58.5. Mike, please tell me that you love my Jayhawks in this game.
I don't. And this is they're
Come on,
one of the many commandments that I have.
Oh, we got a commandment.
Is eventually a poor program is going to run out of steam. I
don't know if we need to shoot strays at Kansas's direction.
Well, they're 4-0 and they're a great story. And I love Lance Leipold as a coach, and I think he's amazing at what he's done. And this is just really awesome. But they're still Kansas. They're still bound to lose a couple of games. This is a perfect game to sort of fall into that. Like everybody's excited about Kansas football. It's at home. They're a home dog. Everything they live for is in this game, but they don't have a solution for Hutchinson. And that's my concern. He's going to go off. He's just an extremely unknown player. One of the best wide receivers in the Big 12, one of the best wide receivers in the country. And he's a guy that I don't think they have a solution for. And I think that type of playmaker is going to make the difference in a close game, a low-scoring game. But I have Iowa State winning this by a touchdown. And it just, again, the commandment is if a traditionally poor program is on a roll, start fading them. And that's what I'm doing with Kansas here. No offense to Lance, no offense to what they've been doing, no offense to you as a Kansas fan. But that's my fade, a not very good program when they get on a little hot streak.
So to your point, the thing the idea that you're talking about, it reminded me of a trend that I had seen this week. This is probably the best or the most intriguing trend that I had seen this week that I wasn't expecting. And I got to give a shout out to Stuckey of the Action Network for this one, for unearthing this one. Because Kansas falls under this system this week. Here's what it is, reading from his column. Undefeated against the spread teams with a 2 touchdown plus average cover margin. So this is, Mike, this is sort of what you're talking about. A team that traditionally hasn't been that great. And then the first month of the season, they super duper excel because an awesome team isn't going to be, averaging more than a 2 touchdown cover margin, but undefeated against the spread teams with a 2 touchdown average cover margin have gone just 21, 44, and 4. That's a little bit less than 34% against the spread as home favorites in game 4 or 5. I don't know when this goes back to this system, but over that sample size, it's a decent enough sample size. And Stuckey in this thing mentioned Syracuse fell under this system last week when they played Virginia on that Friday night or Thursday night, whatever, in the, not the Carrier Dome anymore, whatever they call that thing in Syracuse, but they won outright, but lost against the spread. We'll see if there's anything to that, but I think what it's speaking to is the line inflation that a team like that then generates in this game. For whatever it's worth, my numbers are at least fairly close to what the Vegas line is. I mentioned that it's 3.5 live. My number is actually Iowa State -4. But I do have to take Kansas in this game, of course, in part because I'm an alum. Take it with a grain of salt if you like. But I've just been so impressed with what Kansas has done so far this year. Every single team they've beaten, it has been a legitimate win. 2 of those were on the road. You could quibble with the opponents. At least at the time, they were impressive wins at West Virginia, at Houston. Houston did not look very good last night, but they got good players, etc. And then, of course, last week, Duke, who hadn't lost up till that point. Kansas can do different things on offense now, and they have an awesome singular player in Jalen Daniels, who is now number 5 in the Heisman board, like overall, has moved all the way up. Jalen Daniels throws. He's got an absolute whip for an arm, which is like stunning for like a quarterback who has the frame that he does. He's only a little bit bigger than Miles Kendrick, the kid that they had before, who then transferred down to New Mexico. Miles Kendrick can't throw the ball beyond 15 yards downfield. Jalen Daniels lets that thing fly, and it will go over 70 yards if he gets some body weight into it. He can do that. He can certainly run. He can also pooch punt. You saw that in the last game, and he's done this a little bit in the past. He's cleaning the stadium after the games. I think Iowa State is going to have problems with him and the mobility he brings and the different things that Kansas can do on offense with that mobility, because Jalen Daniels can throw on the run in addition to that. Mike, you make a great point about Hutchinson going on the other way on the Iowa State side. That is certainly going to be a priority for the Kansas defense, is to take him away. He's that veteran guy that's sort of carrying the torch forward from the Breece Hall era, the Brock Purdy era, the Charlie Kolar era. And now they've gone into, Hunter Deckers and Jarrell Brock, and it's gone from a super veteran offense to a very young offense. But Hutchinson is the guy, and Hunter Deckers trusts that guy implicitly. The targets go to him early and often, and Jarrell Brock in the backfield has been a little bit better so far than expected, with the young kids running the ball. But I wasn't terribly impressed with Iowa State against Iowa outside of cleverness on the coaching staff. Matt Campbell knew what, that Ferentz wanted to ugly the game and was like, okay, I'm not sure that I have more talent than you anyway. Let's ugly it up and make it a coin flip game. Iowa ended up fumbling that ball on the half-yard line, the fullback. Iowa State had their one good drive of the game right after that, and they ended up winning because of that. But I wasn't terribly impressed with their performance overall in that. I'm not sure how much that carries over into a game like this, where Kansas is going to want the field a bit wider, and they're going to be doing different dynamic things with Daniels that Iowa couldn't do with Spencer Petras. Last week, Baylor, who had quarterback struggles coming into that game. Blake Shapen hadn't played as well as people had hoped coming into the season. They also had injury concerns before with their skill position guys. They had guys going in and out. Baylor was able to get right in that game against Iowa State in Ames. So a little bit lower on them. For me, this is a lean. With the whole Kansas resurgence thing, I'm very reticent to try. I don't want to jinx them or whatever, but I do like Kansas a little bit, just in terms of where you can get this thing.
You
Iowa State.
You got to mash. You definitely got to mash the money line, then, right?
If you like Kansas, for sure.
I mean, the line's 3.5 actually live now.
By the way, Mike, I got another trend on this one. So Kansas, well, 2 of them. Kansas is 7-0 against the spread in their last 7. And this also falls into the negative trend I was mentioning before about, like covering every game by margin, yada, yada. But they are, it bears mentioning, they've covered in 7 straight. But this is the more interesting one. I found this one on ESPN. Iowa State is 5-13 against the spread. And Matt Campbell's at 18 games as Iowa State's head coach during his tenure there, where the spread is between -3.5 and +3.5. So anywhere in that 7-point window, whether they're favored or, short favored or short underdog. Matt Campbell, for whatever reason, this is just one of those wonky stats, 5-13 against the spread in those 18 games. He hasn't been as good with the games with the really close spreads. This game, of course, would fall under that system. But we'll see. This is going to be a very interesting game for Kansas. They win this one and go to 5-0. Well, so they're going to be ranked then.
Hutch, and listen, I'm rooting for Kansas. Okay, I'm a journalist. I'm not supposed to root for anybody. Screw that. There's no journalists left. You're either a talking head, it's spoon-fed all your information because of what TV network you work for and what affiliation you have with what conference, or you're just an idiot like me who's a college football fan who loves to talk about stuff.
I love Kansas being undefeated. I love it. I asked Lance for an office last week. He told me, give me one. It's not true. I'm not going to get one. But again, I want them to be good because it's fun. It's exciting. And that doesn't mean anything against Iowa State, but they've had their Cinderella time, right? So let's root for Kansas. But here's the thing. 8 catches, 11 catches, 9 catches, 8 catches.
The targets he gets are insane. Hutchinson, you're talking about?
That's
yeah. He gets double-digit targets every game.
Games, absolutely. If they can slow him down, and the over/under yardage is 98.5 receiving yards, and I'm taking the over. If they can slow him down and keep him off, he scored a touchdown in every game but Baylor, and in every game he scored a touchdown this season, they've won. If they can slow him down, Kansas will win this football game. If they can't, and he has a 12 for 144 and 2 touchdown line, there's no way they're winning this football game. So it comes down to him, and I'm betting on him and Iowa State to win.
So, guys, we're going to be with you for 20 to 25 more minutes. But, Mike, we're being too verbose, so I have to push these 2 ones together so we can get to the questions and then the night games. 2 games we're going to talk about. Wake Forest at Florida State. This is the last 3:30 Eastern kick that we're going to talk about. Florida State is -6.5 in that one. And then I also want to hit at the same time Mississippi State -4 against Texas A&M. Your thoughts on those 2 games?
Yeah, I'll give you both. So, again, my theory on Kansas, a traditionally poor program off to a 4-0 start fading them. Florida State, same thing. And you say traditionally poor program. I mean, Florida State's a blue blood. They won a national championship. They've sucked over the last many years. This year, they're 4-0. Have they beaten anybody? That's up for debate. But fade them. Take Wake Forest to cover this. And I think it's scary to do because Florida State's playing with a lot of confidence. But that's my theory there. And then Mississippi State, Cowbells, baby. I mean, that's Texas A&M does not impress me. There's nothing about them that impresses me. And I have them just one of those teams that's going to inflate a line because of their preseason ranking. And I'm taking Mississippi State.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go the first one. I'm going to lean the other way. I do like Florida State in that game against Wake Forest, laying the 6.5 points. My spread on that game is Florida State -9. That's a part of the reason. I also think that Florida State matches up pretty well in that game for a couple different reasons. Number one, I think this is a tough situational spot for Wake Forest where last week, Wake Forest played better than I thought they would, certainly against Clemson. They had to go into, play 5 quarters now and go into overtime. And then, of course, you had the near miss. Mike, you were talking before about the, what did you call it, moral victory, and then you got to turn around the next week. Could be a letdown spot. It's also sort of a body blow spot where you played this very physical Clemson team for the 5 quarters. And then again, you're turning around the next week. Now you got to play Florida State, a team that wants to turn the game into a track meet. And then that brings me into the second reason that I like the matchup for Florida State is they generate so many explosive plays. And now they can do it with both the running game, which we've seen with Norvell going back to Memphis. That's what his genius is generating the explosiveness out of the running game and then consistently having it be efficient. But he's also added the passing element to it this year because Jordan Travis has leaped up. Jordan Travis, I think now is a fringe NFL prospect, whereas before I would not have said that at all. But I think you have to start thinking about him in that way. Florida State now is top 10 in the nation in EPA per pass. So they now bring the passing element to the running game. You also have some of these tall monster tree receivers on the outside, like Johnny Wilson specifically, 6'7" wide receiver who transferred in. Teams cannot double team Johnny Wilson because you have to have guys in the box to deal with Travis's legs, Trayshawn Ward, Toa Philly when they bring them in. You cannot not do that because Florida State will just nick you for 7 yards, 11 yards, 12 yards, and they're moving down the field at will. So you have to sort of put your cornerbacks into these situations where they're on islands. But then you got a kid who's 5'11", who's not going to get a sniff from the NFL, going up against a 6'7" guy who's going to play in the NFL, like on an island. So like in Florida State can find these different matchups, stuff like that. Been very impressed with Florida State this season for those reasons. Wake Forest, they're middle of the pack in terms of their run defense numbers, like in the aggregate, the efficiency stuff. But I want people to keep in mind that comes from a schedule where they played VMI, Vanderbilt, and Liberty. Their rushing defense is not as good as the counting stats sort of indicate. And last week they played a quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei, who had struggled even more earlier in his career than Jordan Travis in terms of like his accuracy and stuff. They made DJU look like Dante Culpepper last week, the Wake Forest pass defense. And as far as their Wake Forest run defense going up against that Goliath of a Florida State rushing offense, here's some stats for you. Wake's run defense ranks below number 100 nationally in the following run. I'm sorry. These are in the run offense categories for Wake Forest. They rank outside the top 100 in success rate, efficiency, explosion, opportunity rate, power success rate, and stuff rate. So Florida State's going to be able to do both things. Wake Forest is only going to be able to do the one. You have to throw into FSU. They're not going to be able to run on them. I like that Florida State can be more multiple in this game. And then with all the matchup things I was talking about before, I like Wake. The other game is
hold on.
Mike, go ahead.
Johnny Wilson, right? Unbelievable weapon, 6'7". They don't target him. They did in the Louisville game, and that's where he got the majority of his pass. 2 catches, 12 yards against BC last week. 3 for 60 against LSU. They don't target him, and that's a concern for me. He's one of the most underutilized players in the country, and if they don't target him today, I will be very, very confused. And like I said,
you got a prop number on him. Because the thing I would say about Johnny Wilson, he got injured in that I think it was the second game, and then he had ended up missing the one. Comes back for Louisville, dominates them. The Boston, for sure, you got to target Johnny Wilson more than that. But I will say, in the defense of the coaching staff, Florida State had that one out of reach so quickly. The game script changed of the whole thing. So I mean, they could just run the clock out, basically, whatever. So. That might have been a game script thing, but you might be able to get a good number on Johnny Wilson today because of that. In the same way that we got an awesome number on Johnny Wilson on that Friday night when he was playing Louisville. That was one of the easiest overs you're ever going to get. The book set it way too low. So anyway, I'd be curious what that is. I don't got it up, but
the book is smart. He's not on DraftKings as a prop.
Okay.
That's which is smart. I mean, it's funny because I looked at that too, because I was thinking about guys that are underutilized that maybe have a low number. Micah Pittman is on there. Ontario Wilson's on there. Nope. No Johnny Wilson, which was crazy because if it was like, 40 and a half yards, I would mash it for sure, just because he's a 150-yard guy waiting to happen if you target him 10 times. But no number.
Weird. Yeah. The Florida State, they do have Winston, right? The West Virginia transfers out indefinitely with a leg injury. And then they have another receiver, Douglas, who is questionable for this game. But Johnny Wilson should ostensibly get a lot of targets, especially if Florida State watched what Clemson did to that Wake Forest pass defense last week. And as we mentioned, they should be able to run on Wake a little bit. The Texas A&M and Mississippi State game, for me, that one, it's the side number. It is right there. It's -4 live, Mississippi State -4. That's exactly what my adjusted total or my adjusted spread is on the game, -4. I got to stay away from that one. My lean on this game would be the over, which I'm sort of reticent about because A&M plays so slow, and the Jimbo Fisher in his career, especially recent history, under is generally the play with him. But this one, that's the line, or the bookmakers are baking that into the total, where this total is only 46. I think they dragged it down a little bit too much. My adjusted total on it is 51. And Mississippi State, their passing attack, they should be able to move the ball at least okay. That's the thing you worry about against a team going against A&M. Like A&M totally discombobulated the Miami offense, although Miami did move the ball between the 20s, I think a little bit better than people remember in that game. It was just they bogged down when they got deeper into scoring territory. I think Mississippi State can convert on some of those scoring opportunities. So I would lean the over on this game, and so would my system. Let's see if we got any questions now, Mike.
So I do have what was I going to talk about? I had something really neat. I had something neat. Oh, we have a celebrity pick.
Oh, let's hear it.
Celebrity pick. So a good friend of mine is the Bear on College Game Day, Chris Felica. Yeah. So I asked the Bear, I said, I was doing my betting pro show, and give me a lock of the week, Bear. And the Bear's not always right. People get very critical of the Bear that he's wrong more than he's right, actually. But I love him to death. He says, which is in agreement with me, Utah -10.5 is the lock of the week against Oregon State. Kind of interesting, huh?
Now I got to stand on the train tracks against both of you guys.
Yeah, because definitely. I mean, the Bears got a pretty good following. I got a good following. You're going to get hammered on that one.
I definitely might get hammered on that one. I'm not going to bet that one live. That game is just too weird for me. My numbers do like Utah, but the Keithy thing is it's hard for me. But I'm keeping my eye on Kendall. What was his first name? Not Jason Kendall.
Baby. Logan
Kendall. Logan Kendall. That's right. Okay, I'm gonna remember that one. Jason Kendall's the former baseball catcher. That's why I keep thinking of that one.
For the Pirates, right? Jason Kendall.
Yeah, Pirates and I think the Royals for a little bit. He might have even had a cup of coffee with the Twins at the end. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any new questions, so we can jump onto the night games. If you guys do have any other questions, Mike and I are going to be with you for another 10 or 15 minutes. So if you have any other questions, ask them quick. We'll try to get to them at the very end. Mike, this is a 7:00 Eastern kick. LSU traveling to Auburn tonight. This line has come down to LSU -8 live right now, and we have a total on it of 45. What are your thoughts on this one?
Auburn's horrible. We saw that last week. LSU is going to win this football game and cover. Harsin will be fired after this game. And my prop of the week, this is, we saw the Mayer line and you saw the Singleton line. Every once in a while you see a prop that just, the Singleton line was just so low. I think that was against Auburn. And Mayer last week, we reached that number by halftime against UNC because it was 49.5 over under receiving yards. Kayshon Boutte over 55.5 yards receiving at Auburn. So the number is only 55.5. He has not been targeted. He doesn't have a great chemistry so far with Jaden Daniels. But Coy Moore, who was an exceptionally talented kid out of high school, 4-star receiver, went to LSU, transferred to Auburn, called him out this week and said that he's better than Kayshon Boutte. And anything I know about Boutte is he's a very egotistical diva, competitive, that type of receiver, where if you piss him off, he's going to go off. And he's going to go well over 100 yards in this game. So 55.5, mash the over. I mashed the hell out of it. And make yourself some free money because that one is just a layup. And I like LSU to cover the 8.
So, Mike, as you were talking, I'm going to put a bet on this live. Sportsbook, I'm looking at numbers. Mike, you said 52.5, right? That's the exact number that I'm seeing right now.
I believe it was 55. When I looked at it this morning, it was 55.5.
Okay. So, and are you on DK?
I'm on DraftKings. Yeah. Did it move?
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at a different book right now. And on that one, it's 52.5. So, these props, the props, people out there, and you might know this, but especially with the CFB props, you'll see more of a vacillation of the lines than, for instance, with a side, in terms of uniformity, book to book. So player props are always one that, Mike and I think would both highly encourage everyone out there to bet CFB props, individual props, if you know what you're doing, because you can find some of these mistake lines. But it's also one where you want to sort of shop it around and see what the best line you can get, because sometimes you'll see a discrepancy of this one was 3, but sometimes you'll see 5, 7, 8. Whatever.
Take that 52.5 then, man. I mean, make yourself some free money. I mean, I looked injury report. He's really not on that. I know he hasn't been targeted that much this season, and obviously the first game against Florida State that we saw, he was frustrated. But you don't call this kid out. You just don't. I'm sorry. I love Coy Moore. He's a nice kid, but don't.
Well, my bet's in, so I'm going to thank Mr. Coy Moore. I'll take if it goes over.
You can thank.
Pissed him off.
Now that I've told you to do
I'm
it,
definitely going to thank you, Mike Farrell.
Well, watch now. Boutte will probably pull a hamstring in the first quarter and get 5 yards. But
hey, don't be pessimistic about our lock props on these episodes have been very good. Like you mentioned, like our top ones. Like I don't want to say that we haven't missed like our favorite one, but I can't remember yet. Because it was Singleton, it was Mayer.
Yeah, we haven't missed our favorite. We have.
And this one, unless we get to the end of the episode and find one we like more, this one we'll plant our flag on.
The one
over on Boutte.
Bettingpros.com, the article I do every morning with the prop bets. This was my number 1 prop.
Okay. I like it, and I am following. I don't think we have any new questions. Let me double check. Okay, no new ones, but again, hit us by the end of it if you have one. Mike, so just two more games as we wrap up here in the next 10 minutes. West Virginia at Texas. This game is a 7:30 Eastern kickoff tonight. This line, I expected it to be double digits by now. I'm kind of surprised that it's only Texas -9. During the week, it was like at 8.5, and then it was like 9.5, and it doesn't want to hit either key number. It doesn't want to go down to the 7, doesn't want to tick up over 10. So it's sort of staying in that sort of quagmire zone where Vegas is just letting the market sort of bat it around. Texas -9 live. We have a total on this game of 62. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like Texas. I mean, it's begrudgingly, I wouldn't bet this. Actually, it's 7.5 on DraftKings right now.
Oh, wow. We got some West Virginia money this morning.
Well, and so as that gets lower, it might change my mind a little bit because I had this, at 9, I was saying Texas, but actually at 7.5. Well, I'm going to still take Texas. They're the more talented football team, obviously. They've got a better roster. West Virginia, Neil Brown. This is the coaching death match is what this is. You remember those celebrity death matches on MTV with the claymation? It was awesome.
Of course. And was it Miles Lane was the referee?
Mills Lane, the referee. It was awesome. So this is Steve Sarkin claymation versus Neil Brown in claymation, and the loser is gone, job wise. I mean, Texas.
You think Texas would fire Sark if he loses this game?
Not after this game, but this sets it off. Okay, you can't be 2-3 at Texas. I'm sorry, going into what, Oklahoma? You just can't be 2-3. I'm not saying they fire him after this, but the Texas Tech loss was a bad one. All the rumblings are back. Oh my God, this guy's over his head. Texas is never going to be good again. The boosters are panicking, blah, blah, blah. Arch Manning may keep Sark employed regardless of what happens this year because it's such a big commitment. But this is almost like whoever loses this game could be pink slipped at the end of the season. And that's why I like this game. Now, I'm still going to take Texas. If that gets below 7, the way it's trending, I would take West Virginia. Honestly, not below 7. If that gets below 7, then I would mash Texas even further because this is coming down. There's a lot of West Virginia money coming in here. I'm not really sure where the confidence is in that because Texas is a better football team. So take Texas right now and hope that number gets below 7.
So I think we can explain the line movement this morning by two things. I was just checking it while you were talking. Texas has already ruled out Quinn Ewers officially, so I guess that must have come this morning as part of reaction to that. The other one is Xavier Worthy, who had I think he had a minor sprain of his ankle or so. I don't think it was a high ankle sprain, but anyhow, he had been questionable. It looks like he's still questionable. I'm guessing that at least the market believes that's trending towards him not playing too. So I'm guessing that's why it toggled down. There had been legitimate hope that Quinn Ewers was going to start in this game and play the whole time. Last week, he was listed as a co-starter on the depth chart. He had come out and dressed and everything like that. Didn't end up giving it a go, and he was also back at practices. So it seemed, and I believe was a full participant in them. So it seemed like he was trending towards playing. It would have been on the early end of his timeline that we were originally given after he injured himself against Alabama, because I think that was 3 to 6 weeks. And I think right now, if my Minnesota math is right, I think we're around 3 weeks. But
3 weeks. Do you remember?
So do you remember
what show broke that news?
What's that? Which one?
Our show.
Which news did we break?
The Ewers. Remember last week?
Oh, about him not playing?
No, about him dressing, him being well ahead of schedule for that 4 to 6. I went off for a good 5 minutes because that was not common knowledge that he was going to dress, and I thought it might play into the game itself, that if they struggled that he might be back. So it's interesting. I don't think Quinn Ewers affects this line, but Xavier Worthy certainly does.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because of that, I thought that, last week still seemed like it was, coin flip sort of proposition. If you saw him, even though it's trending right, I thought for sure we were going to see him this week. So I'm actually surprised that he ended up getting ruled out for this game. But looks like it's going to be Hudson Card. I'm going to be on Texas either way. 7.5, that's fine. I'll take Texas. I don't like West Virginia at all. Whereas I think Sark is safer than you think, Mike. And you mentioned sort of a caveat to that with Arch Manning. I think a lot of that is there too, because as you know, the rest of the class as well that they're bringing in is awesome. The last class he signed is awesome. You don't want to risk all that. I think, but like on the other side, Neil Brown, he is on a very, very hot seat, and I tend to think he's not even going to make the end of the regular season because I don't think West Virginia's going bowling. I think West Virginia is the worst team in the Big 12. Hudson Card and a potentially down receiving core without Xavier Worthy makes it scarier. I think if I had not bet on this game yet, I think I would wait till kick of it till it gets closer to the night, because I think when the official word comes out, with Ewers and then potentially with Worthy, if they end up ruling them out, you may be able to get Texas like beneath 7 at that point. If the market reacts in a certain way, it could go beneath that. So we'll see. But I don't think you would need to bet on Texas right now if you were interested in them at the 7.5 number. Because even if it toggles up a couple, it probably won't hurt you, whereas it could really help you if it ends up falling beneath 7. So anyway, that's the side I am on. Mike, one last game to talk about very quickly. 7:30 Eastern kick. Last game on our card. Clemson is a 7-point favorite hosting North Carolina State. We have a total on this game of 44.5. Who do you like in this one?
I like NC State. The secondary issues that Clemson has play into, Devin Leary's ability, to target guys downfield. I just didn't like what I saw overall. If they don't get pressure on the passer, you can pick them apart a little bit. I'm not saying they win the game. I think it's going to be a close football game. But I like NC State to cover at least the 6.5.
I'm going to be on NC State as well, especially with that. Mike, you said you see 6.5 now. I was 7, seeing 7.
It's 7 okay. 7 live.
Yeah, so I'm going to be taking those 7 points with NC State too. It's the way that I lean. Have not been terribly impressed with Clemson relative to my expectation that I thought they would be. DJU finally looked decent through the air last week, but again, that was against Wake Forest defense. Everybody looks good against Wake Forest's defense. I think that's going to be a different story tonight. Clemson was also involved in that game against Wake Forest last week. I mentioned that I thought Wake Forest maybe qualitatively might play down just a little bit after that. We'll see if Clemson does as well. I also heard from some birdies that Clemson might be more banged up than people realize. So that's something for people to keep an eye on, different guys that they might rule out before the game. We'll see about that. But they might not be quite as full strength as people think. I haven't been terribly impressed with North Carolina State either. I was asked on a show this week about how far I dropped them in my power ratings. I felt like after a couple games, like I had to because of the performance. But you also got to keep in mind still that the talent level there has risen a very solid amount. Obviously, Devin Leary, I do trust him. They have been getting the running game going a little bit better than I thought maybe they would, after they lost their starter over the offseason. I think this is a game that ends up staying closer. Of course, we saw Wake Forest keep it closer than at least I had anticipated. I think this is an opponent coming in. NC State, you talk about a circle game. They got the big red Sharpies around Clemson, getting the 7 points. I'm going to take it with them. So Mike and I both agree on them. Mike, before we let people go, we did get one last buzzer beater of a question from JDNGV. I hope I got that acronym right. He wants our opinion on Rutgers and Ohio State. And then he asked on that game, he asked if he should wait until Ohio State inevitably goes up early and bet Rutgers live at over 41, what the line is now. So he's asking, should I bet it before the game or should I bet it live? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I would wait. I mean, the line's 39.5 now, so it's moved a little bit. Yeah, I would wait, for Ohio State to take, a 35-7 lead and then see what the line is at that point. And then maybe they call off the dogs. But this is going to be a rout. We know this. There's no comparison in the teams. If I had to take the line, I would probably take Ohio State to cover 39.5, but I would wait
Wait till they build a lead, see what that line is, and then pounce. If you can get that line plus 42, something like that, I would jump on Rutgers to cover, because Ryan Day's not going to waste his players in the second half of a game against Rutgers. He's Harbaugh beat him 70-7 one year. Harbaugh is a different animal. He will do that. Ryan Day will not. He'll play much smarter and try to get some more playing time for his guys.
He for sure will, and especially after Ryan Day just learned a lesson about Jackson Smith and Jigba, where he had missed those 2 games, and it seemed like he was trending towards not playing against Toledo, and he must have gotten in the ear of Ryan Day a day or two before that game and convinced him to let him play. In hindsight, that was a big mistake, because then there was the re-aggravation, I think, of that injury. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been ruled out this morning. We are not going to see Jackson Smith and Jigba today, but I think because of that, yes, they will be even more. Ohio State will be even more conservative in that direction. I think the other thing. Go ahead.
Michigan State is the next game. I mean, that's an important game. You're not going to have your starters in there into the late third quarter, fourth quarter in a rout when you got Michigan State coming up.
That, and also Ryan Day is friends with Schiano. Like every time because they used to coach together on the same staff. Every time the media gives Ryan Day a shot to compliment Greg Schiano and say how much he respects him, etc., Ryan Day takes every one of those opportunities. So like also, just Ryan Day is not going to be, you wouldn't think, motivated to try to embarrass Schiano either. And you'll say about Rutgers, the offense, not great, but the defense is pretty good. They play good special teams. They have a pretty solid defense as well. So they're going to try to slow the game down, let the clock run. I think Ohio State, that's certainly going to be their prerogative in the second half. And then without Jackson Smith and Jigba, the receiving core is still elite, of course, but it's not quite as elite. We saw in a couple of the other games when Jackson Smith and Jigba went out, they weren't quite as dominant on offense as they've been. So I think all those different reasons, I actually like Rutgers in that game. I would bet it beforehand. This was one of my first bets on Sunday, the show that I do with Thomas, the look ahead thing. Thomas asked me like the game that I thought there was the most value on at that point. It was Rutgers for me on Sunday night, because at that time they were like plus 43. Which was way out of line from what my line was, like something like that. And then it had dropped down to 41 by midweek, and now it's dropped down even more. I think, the sharps in the market recognize Rutgers as the correct play, plus the Jackson Smith and Jigba injury, plus Ryan Day and Schiano being friends, plus a potential look-at spot for Ohio State, plus the prerogative of Ohio State not to want in a blowout for any more of their key players to suffer injuries. I think plus Ryan Day wants to establish a run with Travion Henderson, because he keeps talking about how that will help them during the championship run. They have to run during the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the play is on Rutgers. I mean, the person that asked about should you wait or should you not, it's up to you. I mean, like the market right now, it seems to be maybe not, as a whole, because the public might be doing more of the bets on Rutgers, but it seems like on Ohio State, but it seems like the sharper money is coming in on Rutgers, especially in acknowledgement of that Jackson Smith and Jigba thing. So I don't think this is exactly a game where you can be guaranteed that you're going to get a better line than what you got live. You could. I mean, if Ohio State comes out and scores 2 quick touchdowns, for sure you could. But if Rutgers gets the first touchdown, and then the market has already been betting on, or the sharp market, more of the money been coming in on Rutgers, then you're not going to be able to get the number that you even could have in the pregame. So I think that's probably up to the way that you see like the initial part of the game, whatever. But I think I'd probably just take the points as they are. I think that's the last question we got. It is.
This
Mike,
just
anything else before we let people go?
My buddy Chife sent me some stuff because he knows you're a big Kansas guy. Iowa State 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games against Kansas. 4-2 against the spread in their last 6 games when playing on the road against Kansas. And Kansas is 1 of 4 straight up in their last 5 games when playing at home against Iowa State.
It's a new era of Kansas football, Mike Farrell.
Right. All those numbers are thrown out. No history involved. This is new Kansas. This is Mark Mangino. This is Orange Bowl.
Yes, exactly. You said it. On that note, for Mike Farrell, I am Thor Nystrom. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of College Game Day, of College Game Day Live. Really appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in again. Presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Everybody, good luck with your bets today and enjoy your college football Saturday.